Good morning, Ms. Collis.
Morning, Chief Justice. Morning,
Hi.
Commissioners.
Are you well?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
You've been a magistrate for how long now?
15 years now. On the 30th of September, it was 15 years exactly.
When you began to act in the High Court, did it strike you as a quantum leap, or were you able to adapt quickly to that new environment?
Chief Justice, it was quite challenging in the sense that there are certainly more volumes to deal with in the High Court. It was also the complexity of the matters in the High Court was also a challenge I found. But I had been fortunate. I was placed on the civil roll, and as a magistrate since my appointment in 2002, I've only been doing civil matters. So I was very. It was easy for me to adapt in that respect. But the complexity of the matters was certainly something to look at twice.
Did you find any support from senior colleagues there, or were you on your own?
Yes, I did, Chief Justice. What happened was, before I was first called to act, I was invited by the Deputy Judge President, Judge Mojapelo, for a judicial, almost an aspirant judges training program. It only lasted for a week, and senior judges within the division was offering the lectures there. But when I took up my acting appointment, I was assigned a mentor, Judge Mashidi, and I must say other male judges were eager to mentor also. I didn't find a lot of female judges offering mentoring support. But the collegiality amongst the judges was always there, and I felt easy to approach them if I needed guidance.
Did you get to know why female judges were, so to speak, unavailable to mentor you?
I really don't know, because
Were
the
they
judges.
unavailable or unwilling?
Well,
Or
firstly,
don't
the
you
division.
know?
Chief Justice, the division is that I started acting in is quite busy, so that might pose to be a problem. But generally, males were easier to approach, I felt, and I did so.
And what is the longest period you have kept the judgment reserved for?
I would think just about 3 months, and it started off in my earlier acting stints, during my earlier acting stints.
Never 6 or 8 or 12?
No, it's never been that. Certainly not, Chief Justice.
How did you manage to get judgments ready and delivered within 3 months?
I think my skills as a judicial officer assisted me in writing of judgments. And the challenge around judgment writing, I think, has always been you need to, or for me, I need to gather my thoughts around the actual judgment before I put pen to paper, so to speak.
Yes.
So I didn't really struggle that much.
Yes.
It varies from judgment to judgment, of course.
A number of permanent judges in Gauteng came here, didn't have reserved judgments, but I realized that quite a good number of them now have reserved judgments that have given me reason to be concerned. Would you know why this is so? And say how you're going to avoid falling into that trap if you were to be appointed permanently?
Well, judgment writing is part of what you need to do. It's part of your core function as a judicial officer. So you simply cannot hold the view that I will get to it when I have time. You need to consistently work, keep track of the judgments that's reserved, and take the effort to actually sit down and prepare them thoroughly.
Yes. JP?
Thank you, CJ. Ms. Collis, I've given the Commission a spreadsheet That tells the Commission what you've done in all your acting stints. You've done a total of 9 weeks in the opposed motion court.
Yes, JP.
And I think you have 3 weeks in the urgent court.
Yes, 2 of those weeks I did during recess.
During recess, yes, right. And you've chopped 17 weeks in the appeal courts.
Yeah, usually when I'm called to act, I usually get a week in the appeal court or so.
Right. Now, the longest judgment you've reserved is about 4 months, according to my calculation. And I want to echo what the CJ put to you, that when people come to be interviewed, they have a very good record in terms of not reserving long. But once they become permanent, the picture changes. Right. I'm not sure I understood what your answer was as to how will you avoid falling into that trap.
Well, my answer was I need to consistently work at producing my judgments because it's your core function to do as a judge.
I see. And you've never practiced. I think you're in practice for about 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, when you were a candidate attorney and 6 months as a PA. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. JP.
Other than that, you've been a prosecutor.
And a magistrate.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you're a senior magistrate now, head of the Western Office.
I was only acting in that position, JP, and that position has since been filled. So from the 1st of July, I'm back at my office
Right.
as a district court magistrate.
Now, looking at the amount of acting you've done, a total of 64 weeks, according to my calculation, and the number of heavy weeks you've done, especially in the opposed motion, unopposed, you think that's prepared you sufficiently to be appointed permanently?
I think so, JP, it has, because my CV speaks to my capabilities as well as my experience level, and similarly my acting stints. I think I can be appointed a judge.
Yeah. In your life as a magistrate, have you dealt with anything constitutional? And in your acting stints, can you share that with the Commission, if any?
Not to my knowledge as a magistrate or as an acting judge.
Okay. Okay.
No, I haven't, JP.
Okay. In the appeals that you've sat in full courts as well?
Yes, I've sat in full courts. I remember the first full court appeal that I sat in was criminal appeal that I sat with Judges Claassen and Nichols.
Okay. Thank you very much, CJ. No questions.
Thank you very much, JP. MEC?
Thank you very much, CJ. No questions from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, MEC. Judge President Hlophe?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Ms. Collis, I have 2 questions for you. Firstly, is there racism in the judiciary? And if so, why after 23 years of democracy in this country, in your opinion? Secondly, do you have any views on how indigenous African languages, such as isiZulu, isiXhosa, Setswana, and so on, can be used and developed fully so that they can take their rightful place in our jurisprudence? Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, JP.
Thank you, Judge President. I think we've had the unfortunate incident of racism being displayed in the Gauteng division by one of the judges that have now since resigned. So the answer to your first question is yes, there is racism. I do not know why we're still dealing and grappling with this problem after 23 years. One would have thought that people would have accepted the differences that we all present, and they would have embraced it with the dawn of democracy. I think it's unfortunate that it still rears its ugly head, racism that is, And we all have to make a conscious decision to work it out, to root it out in society. To the second question, around indigenous African languages, I think we all have to take a conscious decision to learn African languages, especially if you find yourself within the domain of the courts. I am critical of myself in this regard. I've been a bit complacent around the learning of an indigenous African language. So I need to take steps to learn one. And then that way, I believe we should be able then to introduce African indigenous languages in our court system to work on the jurisprudence in that respect. I hope I've answered you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Judge President. Commissioner Nkosi Thomas.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good morning, Ms. Collis.
Morning, Commissioner.
Working through your papers, it strikes me that you have, in other words, your experience is mainly with civil matters, civil litigation.
Yes, that is so, Commissioner, but I was a prosecutor previously before I was appointed a magistrate. And the last term of acting, I spent 3 weeks on the criminal role in Mpumalanga.
See, what type of work did you do there?
Criminal work, the criminal role. Trials, yes.
Trials, not civil, criminal appeals.
No, trials. I actually was on the criminal role. I finalized one matter.
Yes.
The other matter is unfortunately still partly hurt because we commenced the proceedings a day later than what we should have.
Is that what is being referred to here when it states, the spreadsheet states that you have 3, under the column criminal it says 3.
Yes,
so is that
those are the 3 weeks that is made reference to there.
And the 3 matters, the 3
Yes.
trials. I see. So are you comfortable that you will be able to conduct criminal proceedings adequately?
Yes, Commissioner. The one matter I finalized it in totality. The other matter is still partly hurt. I'm returning in December to finalize the matter.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Advocate Nkosi Thomas, SC. Commissioner Nyambi.
Thank you, CJ. Morning.
Morning, Commissioner.
If you can share with us your understanding of the doctrine of separation of powers.
The doctrine refers to the 3 arms of the state, the branches of the state, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. The functions are different amongst the 3 branches. The function of the judiciary is to interpret the laws. The function of the executive is to implement the laws, and the function of the legislature is to make those laws. The 3 branches are therefore to act independently, and what I believe one should guard against is too much power being given to one particular branch against the other. That's my understanding of it.
Thank you. My last question, it's the issue that was reported about the dispute of the vendor chieftains. If you can share with us what really happened.
The background facts around the report.
No, what was reported by the media about your involvement, what really happened? What was the problem?
Thank you, Commissioner. The judges should be able to act independently and without influences, either from individuals or organs of state. So in that particular matter, what happened was I was approached telephonically initially by a person that introduced himself, and he had said that he's aware that I'm going to deal with a matter involving the vendor chieftaincy. And at that time, I had not been allocated my roster, and as such, I was not even aware that I would have been dealing with that particular matter. And when I went to take up service at the court, the Sunday preceding the day that I was to deal with the matter, I was again approached by a person in the dining hall of the hotel where I sat. And he introduced himself as the person that had made a telephonic call to me. which raised my eyebrows. I then decided I need to report this issue to the legal representatives of the parties, because part of the engagement telephonically that had taken place was an invitation for me to meet the vendor chief, I think. And I felt that was inappropriate. They tried to influence my decisions around the matter. And I did, as a result, reported it to the litigants' legal representatives the following morning. And I decided I should not proceed with the matter because it can be perceived as if I was biased to a particular litigant. So those are the background facts to the matter.
With hindsight, are you satisfied about how the whole issue was handled?
Yes, I am, Commissioner.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Commissioner Nyambi.
Can I make a follow-up, CJ, on this issue?
Okay.
What's the name of a person who approached you?
I can't remember his name off by heart.
Is he in the legal fraternity or in the judicial?
He's not in the legal fraternity or the judiciary, no. It's a private individual.
Professor Mutaka?
Mr. Collins, it appears to me that largely is the poorest of the poor that are in conflict with the law, and that our correctional centers are also overcrowded by the poorest of the poor, and that rehabilitation and social integration is also a difficult matter. Have you made time to visit some of the correctional centers to see for yourself what the situation is like in these prisons and whether the law, as we apply it, doesn't need to be accompanied by some knowledge of social sciences?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. When I was head of office in the Roodepoort Magistrates Court, part of my functions entailed visits to the correctional facilities that services the area within which the court is situated. And in that area, that correctional services center is called the Krugersdorp Correctional Center. So I have been to that correctional center twice. And during my visit, I was able to engage with the role players of the center itself and went to the various sections in the center to see the conditions under which incarcerated people are kept, the lack of facilities that they have at their disposal, amongst others. I have done that. Thank you.
Agree with me that maybe our curriculum, law curriculum, should be changed to make social sciences compulsory so that our legal practitioners develop some social conscience, because our society seems to produce criminals, and as legal practitioners, we seem not to be conscious of that situation in our application of the law.
Yes, Commissioner, I would agree with what you're proposing in respect of the change in curriculum is concerned, because I think if you have insight as to what the prison system does to an incarcerated person, you will have better appreciation that that should be the first place that people that ought to be punished should be sent to. So I think it's very important.
Thank you. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Doctor. President Meyer?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good morning, Ms. Collis.
Good morning, President Meyer.
Yeah, I have to say this. I'm very impressed by the manner in which you write your judgments, or at least those you have attached to your questionnaire. You write in this crisp and lucid manner, and I know that's no mean feat, and it's an admirable skill in a judge, in a judicial officer, because it makes it easy for any reader Oh, sorry, Sir Judge. It makes it easy for any reader, even a layperson, to read the pronouncements of the court. So keep that up.
Thank you, President Maya.
My question is this. Are there any challenges that you have experienced on the bench that arose purely from your gender, that is from the fact that you are a woman? And if there are, what measures can be put in place to eliminate them?
Thank you, President Maya. The truth of the matter is the domains of the courts are predominantly occupied by males. So when it comes to legal representatives, predominantly you see males appearing in court and a lesser amount of females. So when legal representatives come and introduce themselves to you in the morning more often, that is when you can perceive their concern that you might not be capable as a woman being the presiding judge in a matter. But you need to have your own self-belief, I think, and you need to be capable. And that is not something that somebody else can enforce on you. It's your responsibility to become capable, to read up where you need to read up on certain things, and to be able not to fall short of the expectation of you as a female judge. I hope I've answered you.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Could I just ask, there seem to be various positions, hierarchical positions in the magistrate. You get an assistant additional magistrate, senior magistrate, and so you go on. It seems to me that you, on the level of additional magistrate, and have not yet, I think, have written or applied the test for a regional court magistrate. The first question is, why not? Would you aspire to do so? And the second issue is, if you look at your page 6 of your nomination form, you, on court experience, you say, do you appear in court? And you mark not at all. And then if you page through the rest of your nomination form, it seems to me that you're quite involved in managerial activities, which is fine. But could you, in that regard, just indicate what the percentage of your work is in court versus your seemingly managerial position outside court, percentage-wise, if you could? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. It is so that there are various ranks of magistrates. You have additional magistrate when you get appointed, and then the next level is that of a senior magistrate, and then you can become a regional court magistrate or regional court president. Those are there's also chief magistrate, sorry, I forgot. Those are the ranks within the magistracy that you find. As far as regional court magistrate is concerned, I have applied to become a regional court magistrate about 3-4 years ago. I went for an interview, I was not successful, but I've not had any exposure in the regional court through acting stints. Not because I'm not interested in becoming a regional court magistrate, the opportunity has just not arisen. As far as my court appearances are concerned, I just want to get to the point where you say I've marked that I've not at all.
Just look at page 6.
6.1.
6.1, yes, court experience.
Well, I took the question whether I appear in court. I preside in a court. So I took the question with reference to the litigants. So that's why I marked not at all.
And percentage-wise, your managerial functions towards your appearance in court as such?
Well, I'm more in court now than I've always been more in court than as far as my managerial skills are concerned. I've only been a manager for the last 2 years. On request, I might add.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmidt. Commissioner Masuku?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Morning, Ms. Collins.
Morning, Commissioner.
Just following up a question that was raised by one of the commissioners relating to this vendor chieftainship issue. What was the real nature of your interaction, either on the phone or when you met this person at the hotel, the result of which you decided you would not preside over the matter? Because I would expect that if there was interference in the sense that they offered you money or they spoke to you about the case and you engaged with them, and of course you'd feel uncomfortable having engaged with them to then preside over the matter. But would this be typically a basis for a judge to remove themselves from presiding over a case? That you had a phone call from somebody who said, I understand that you are presiding over a matter, and then you meet them at a hotel, they say they want to talk to you, but you really don't talk to them. What was exactly the nature of that interaction?
All right,
Because because that's very important for how we evaluate your sense of independence as a judge.
Yes.
That you're not going to be intimidated with phone calls and meetings at hotels where you don't in fact engage.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. The first concern that was raised to me through the telephone call is the person called me on my cell phone number, which I do not understand how the person got access to my cell phone number. He was not a court official, and he was aware of a matter to be dealt with by me when I was not even aware what my allocation on the roll would have been. That was the first concern that was raised in my mind, because the duty roster that's allocated indicates that you are doing, and in that instance it was an opposed motion, but it does not stipulate the matters you'll be allocated to be dealt with during that opposed motion sitting. So that was my first concern. How would a person that's not a litigant before the court, not a legal representative, be aware that I'm the presiding judge to be allocated that particular matter? That was my first concern. As far as the interaction that took place in the hotel the preceding Sunday to the day that I was going to deal with the matter, similarly, I found it odd that this person is residing in the same hotel where I was booked into, which perhaps one can explain because there's not many hotels in the area, but the person took up on our earlier conversation that took place on the phone, which raised my eyebrows, because if it was such an innocent call, why would he specifically, after introducing himself again, pick up on that particular conversation? And hence I took it that I need to bring this to the attention of the legal representatives. They asked for an opportunity to speak to the instructing attorneys because it was counsel appearing on both sides, and they came back to me to say they are very much aggrieved by what has taken place. They have confronted the person. He was actually in court that day. They had confronted this person, and he had confirmed that he had called me, and it was inappropriate for him to do so. And the purpose of the call was to try and influence me. So it's on that basis that I stood down from the matter.
Well, thank you for the answer.
Thank you.
Just to make sure I don't make a mistake, you are Miss Collis, not Collins.
Yes, Collis without the N.
All right.
Thank you, Chief
You are
Justice.
excused, Miss Collis.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, JP, was your hand up?
Yes, CJ, if it's necessary, I could explain the action we took, because the approach to Ms. Collis was not the first one that had come from this man.
From the same person?
From the same person, yes. But it's only when it happened with Ms. Collis that I confronted the colleagues who sit in vendor. And that's when they told me, it was the more senior ones who said, look, we regard this person as a pest. We don't know how he gets this information. But I then took steps to make approaches to the vendor king, because this person was, to me, I was told he's the advisor to the king, to say the king must rein this person in because what he's doing is not right. And then it transpired that he was not the king's advisor. But ever since we intervened, he's never done it again.
Thank you. You are excused, Ms. Collis.
Thank you.